Live from our respective living rooms. It's Saturday night.
Doesn't quite have the same ring. Live from West Hollywood and Palos Verdes. It's us on Breakfast All Day. This is Jason Reitman's tribute to the earliest days, the first day of Saturday Night Live, back when it was still known just as Saturday Night. It has been out in a few theaters already, and it's getting wider release this weekend. And then the big nationwide release is October 11th, which is the anniversary of when Saturday Night first aired, October 11th, 1975. So it's why you're seeing all these billboards everywhere, like SNL, the 50th season, and this all kind of connects with that.
Okay, well, what kind of show is it, Lauren? Do you even know what the show is?
Did anyone ask Edison what a light bulb was before he harnessed electricity?
Who are you in the metaphor?
So it plays out pretty much in real time. You know, it's like the 90 minutes or so heading into 11:30 p.m. Eastern on that Saturday night. And it is this sort of rollicking walk and talk, following all these people around. And it's famous people playing other famous people. And then sort of true to the spirit of the fact that these weren't really well-known cast members back then. Dan Aykroyd, Jane Curtin, John Belushi, they weren't really known that well. The actors playing them also aren't all that well-known either. I would say like Dylan O'Brien as Dan Aykroyd is maybe the best known, or like Nicholas Braun as both Andy Kaufman and Jim Henson.
Yeah.
It's so inspired. Yeah.
Like Cory Michael Smith, if you watched Gotham or Todd Haynes' Carol, you'll know him. And of course, Lamorne Morris, I think is, you know, but yeah, generally speaking, these are all up and comers playing then up and comers, you know?
Yeah, for sure. So there's sort of like a crazy, like a controlled, chaotic spirit to this. And we were following around Gabriel LaBelle, who is the young Lorne Michaels. So he had to play young Spielberg in The Fabelmans and then young Lorne Michaels in Saturday Night. So like no pressure there at all. And so he's sort of our through line in this as he is walking through the hallways of Studio 8H and like talking to, you know, various cast members and like managing egos and dealing with like lights that are crashing from the ceiling and pages that aren't ready yet. And
putting
just
out literal fires.
Literal fires at times. And then Cooper Hoffman is Dick Ebersol, who like wants to put the show on the air, but doesn't totally have faith in it. Willem Dafoe is an NBC exec who is there as well. J.K. Simmons is Milton Berle. And
yes, he is.
Because we have Milton Berle here, we have the obligatory reference to Milton Berle's genitalia here. Got to have that. So there's always a threat that they're not going to make air and that they have a Johnny Carson Tonight Show rerun queued up in case that doesn't happen.
Yes.
And it's incredibly fun and beautifully cast and ultimately quite empty. Like I enjoyed myself while I was watching it. It's very entertaining. It's got like a great kind of like propulsive energy to it. It's got a lot of Robert Altman in the ensemble and like the overlapping dialogue, but also a lot of Aaron Sorkin with like the rapid fire walk and talk down this hallway and into this dressing room, into this costume area. And so I had a good time while I was watching it, but it does not ultimately say a whole lot about Saturday Night Live. And I don't think that they ever capture what an enormously influential force this show will go on to be. It's just sort of like, well, here's a bunch of lunatics and maybe they'll make a comedy show that works. So I had fun while I was watching it, but afterward I'm like, it doesn't really tell us a whole lot.
I mean, I did have a good time watching it. And once I really let go of the idea that any of this happened the way that it's spelled out here, I think I was able to enjoy it that much more. Like there is stuff here where you're like, okay, no, there's no way that happened. There's all, you know, like, yes, I know Andy Kaufman would like sink himself into character, but he is the guy, he is his onstage persona the entire movie, which and maybe not. With Andy Kaufman, you never know. But like, I went back and rewatched that first episode. There's a whole cast member missing from this movie.
Who?
George Coe, who was in the original cast of Company, is a character actor. You've heard his voice in a million commercials. Was listed as a not ready for primetime player for that first episode. He's in sketches. Nowhere to be found in this movie. So they are clearly just kind of going with the ones you know, with the big names here. Reitman and Gil Kenan, his co-writer, are making an effort to show you what a big deal this was. Like why primetime wasn't ready for them, you know, and why like variety television at that point was so bland and packaged and corny and Milton Berle-ish that this show was like a big sort of épate la bourgeoisie about the whole thing. And I wish there was more of that, but I did enjoy the Gabriel LaBelle's performance as Lorne Michaels was very engaging. It brought me in. I didn't know that he had been married to Rosie Schuster. I didn't realize that Rosie Schuster was kind of his Polly Platt. Was sort of the woman behind the guy whose taste really kind of helped shape things early on.
And Rachel Sennett's fun as her.
She is. And there's just pleasure along the way, and I think there's a cokey energy to this movie in a weird way. Like if Inherent Vice is a movie that makes you feel like you are stoned, this is a movie that makes you feel like you're jittery because of the camera just constantly moving and there's just things always going on, and it almost never stops to take a breath.
Yeah,
and you almost kind of wish it didn't when it does, because
why? What happens then?
Just because, like, when it tries to sort of get more into kind of the character-y aspects of it, it's sort of like, that's not what this movie is. This movie is about, let's put on a show. This movie is about like defying the odds and putting all the things together and getting the pieces in place to make this thing happen. And that's where it's at its best. I really liked Cory Michael Smith as Chevy Chase because he doesn't look like Chevy Chase, but oh man, does he capture the like sort of arrogant swagger of 1975 Chevy Chase, like so well. I liked Lamorne Morris a lot. Most of the not ready for primetime players kind of don't really get much to do.
The women in particular get short
The women
shrift.
in particular, yes, definitely. But as a backstage machinations thing, and I guess everybody lives long enough to see a movie made about a historical event that they know too much about and know what the movie is getting wrong, But I had a good time.
Yeah, you can see why Jason Reitman is attracted to this period in time and these people, given like his connection with like Dan Aykroyd,
sure,
with the Ghostbusters and all that.
Yeah, his dad is definitely tangential to this history. Bernie Brillstein pops up for like 5 seconds, parked in Lorne's office, and he was very much a player in Reitman's early career and a lot of the folks that broke out of this show. So yeah, I mean, this is almost kind of a legacy project for Jason Reitman to scoop up, and I'm sure he was able to get access to stuff that maybe other people wouldn't have. But yeah, it's, as an exercise in just movement and momentum and pacing and like the editing here is really great.
Totally.
I want to shout out, I don't know who the editor here is, Nathan Orloff and Shane Reed. Kudos, gentlemen.
Y'all so well. The casting and the editing both are very impressive here.
Absolutely.
And the costume design.
Yes. No, I think they really nail a lot of the detail of 1975. And, the fact that like the SNL set still had like craft theater on the back of them, people, Saturday Night Live is such an institution now that it's kind of hard to think there was ever a time where they were the scrappy underdogs. But this is the scrappy underdog moment where literally up to the moment of air, and again, I don't believe this is true, but the idea here is that up to the moment of air, NBC could have just decided to go with the Carson rerun and pull the plug on the whole thing. And so, I liked it. I think I liked it.
You know who was awesome? Was Matthew Rhys as George Carlin.
Yes.
I could not place that while I'm watching it. I'm like, holy shit, he looks and sounds so much like him. Who is this? So not until the credits rolled could I figure out that was Matthew Rhys. But he's doing so well.
I thought he was David Duchovny at first.
I could not even begin to figure it out. I thought it was just so uncanny. But like, he's doing what I think a lot of people are doing, especially Cory Michael Smith as Chevy Chase. Like, they're not playing the accurate versions of these people. They're playing their personas. They're playing the Chevy Chase we know. They're playing the Dan Aykroyd we know.
Right.
They're playing the Gilda Radner we know. And like, that's an interesting meta idea too, I think. Like, how do you divorce this performer from the persona?
Well, I think it depends. Like, like one of the raps that people have about Mommy Dearest is that Faye Dunaway is basically recreating all these Joan Crawford cinematic moments, thinking that we wouldn't recognize Joan Crawford if we didn't see her the way that we saw her in movies. But I think that like the Chevy Chase that Cory Michael Smith is playing, for instance, is not just the on-camera Chevy Chase, but certainly the one that we have seen in interviews and
Right.
like, you know, that kind of stuff. Yeah, exactly. Like I think it all scans with being the real guy. Tracy Letts has a great like one scene
Right.
here, you know. So yeah,
Packed.
I mean, everything you're saying that's wrong with this movie, I can't dispute, but I really enjoyed watching it and being in that world for that time period. And yeah, if it then induces people to go read one of several books that have been written about the origins of Saturday Night Live, do that, because you know, this is not the history, this is the legend.
Yeah. Well, what's your number then?
I'll say a 7.5. I really thought it was well put together, and I very much enjoyed it.
I'm close to that. I'm like a 7. Like, it's very, very fun. It's like rollicking and propulsive, and it moves really well. So
Totally.
Saturday Night is in some theaters now. It'll be nationwide on October 11th.